we doing? Hello. So today we have two things to go through. Number one, I really want to chat to you guys about the Etsy policy changes. I mean, not really a policy change, if I'm being completely honest, but Etsy's announcement that they made. I feel like top of my head's cut off. It's bugging me. You know, when something's bugging, that's better. That's better. You know, I need to like sit up straight, first of all. So I'm going to adjust my cushion real quick. There we go. That's a lot better. I tell you what, guys, my posture is terrible. So I really wanted to chat to you guys about the announcement that Etsy made, what it all means, whether you should be worried, whether you shouldn't be worried, any kind of changes, all that kind of stuff. Then I wanted to kind of like go into 3 things that you can tweak to make your listings better that are things that people don't really talk about or don't really kind of know about. So the very first thing that I wanted to chat to you guys about today is the thing that Etsy made different, which is this announcement where they are really listening to what people have said, and they want more kind of, they use the word reinforcement, which means that nothing has actually really changed, but instead they've actually been a lot more transparent with these labels, and the labels look a little something like this. So this is what the labels will be, and all of you now will have one of these 4 labels rather on your item, so on your listings. Okay, so it'll either say made by shop name, handpicked by shop name, designed by shop name, and sourced by shop name. Now, something that Etsy has made very clear, and this was way back when they announced this, which was on the 8th of May, when they talked a lot about the trust and safety and the fact that they've been listening to people talking about like products from China, Temu, AliExpress, all those kinds of things that are on the platform. So as you can imagine, if you have 7 million shops, okay, and you are in charge of them all, and you have to keep everything fair, everything equal, everything safe, it's a big job. Okay, someone's got to do it, but it's a massive job to make sure that everybody it's all kept very fair and very safe and very trustworthy, right? So Etsy's kind of answer to that, and what I will say is I think that this is the first little baby step, okay? I think there's going to be more changes like this, and I think it's a great thing, okay? And here's why. So before all of this, it was basically either it's handmade or it isn't. It's handmade or it isn't, right? And it was very sort of like, handmade is a very ambiguous word. It can mean I get this mug and I put a sticker on it and I say I made it. That was technically allowed, right? It could mean that, you know, I've gotten this candle and I've hand poured it, I've created the scent, I've done everything like that. It could mean I don't know, gotten this glasses case and I've engraved a name on it, and that would be handmade as well. And obviously, when you're a shopper and you're going on to Etsy and you're seeing, well, how come this mug is classed as handmade and this glasses case is classed as handmade? Like, what? Is it really? And this is where people started to have a bit of a problem, because they were saying it's not handmade because you're having things put on it. And this was even before you had the big crisis of like the Temu stuff, the stuff from China, all that kind of stuff, right? So it was a very difficult thing to concisely say this is handmade and this is not. And also it's sort of like, who is anybody to say that this is classed as handmade and this isn't? Okay, so instead what they've done is that they've created 4 different labels. Like I said, made by a seller, designed by a seller, handpicked by a seller, and sourced by a seller. Okay, now, made by a seller is physical items made by a seller by hand or using personal or computerized tools. Okay, designed by is sellers' original designs that are produced, reproduced, printed by a third party, or offered as a digital download. Okay. Handpicked is things like vintage items. So that is why it's encompassed the vintage people as well. Items from nature, certain collections of items that a seller has personally brought together and curated for sale, and sourced by a seller, which is items that enable buyer creativity, including craft and party supplies, and items that are personalized with a buyer's custom text or image. Okay, so things like this, for an example, if I want to go on Etsy and buy a personalized glasses case, the seller would be buying these in and engraving the name. So that would be sourced by a seller based on what this has said. Okay. Now it goes on to kind of give you more examples. So I'm going to go over the kind of main two, which is made by and designed by. And this is where people are having problems. And I'm going to go on to explain why this is all a good thing. Okay. Because I bet a lot of you are like, so can you explain why this is a good thing? Because honestly, on Threads, it was popping off. People were like getting really angry. And I'm going to be honest, I like to remain as impartial as I can. But even me and the team were like, I don't really understand why people are getting so irate about it, because actually nothing has changed. And I can prove that by literally, hang on, let me find it. If I go to the actual announcement, all they've said is to reinforce, I'm going to zoom in, to reinforce what we stand for. So nothing has actually changed. And it's really important to kind of go through and look at the words that they are using, because a lot of people were scanning the announcement and assuming that everything was changing. Then they were going to like social media and being like, oh my God, like what, you know, and it was like, well, nothing has actually really changed, because if your item is not handmade, and I do often kind of feel like this is where a lot of the anger and a lot of the confusion was coming from, was from people who are like, I'm kind of bordering the rules, I'm kind of skirting around it, I'm living in the gray area. And these are the people who are like annoyed, because obviously it means that their non-handmade products or non-vintage or non-supply products were no longer allowed. And that was where a lot of the uproar was kind of coming into it. Okay. So let's just go over this. So made by a seller. So these are physical items made by a seller's hands or using personal or computerized tools. Okay. So include things like handcrafted items, so entirely by hand. So like they're giving an example like raw or basic materials, such as like a sewing machine, wool, clay, whatever. Hand altered items. So these are commercially available base products. So, you know, you get things like Pod, where people buy t-shirts, they print their own design onto it. They buy mugs, they print their own, like the heat press and all that kind of stuff. It's that sort of stuff. Okay, that's also under the umbrella of made by a seller. Okay, you've also got hand assembled items. So these are commercially available supplies or components that you put together. Okay, now the example that they did say is you cannot buy a Lego set, put it together and sell it as a handmade good, because it's not, because you have a kit, you're assembling that kit and putting it for sale as per the manufacturer's instructions. That's another thing that they were very clear on. Items produced by computerized tools. So these are physical items that a seller produced in their personal shop or at home using tools such as like laser printer, 3D printer, cry cut machines, all that. So that all comes under the umbrella. Okay, now let's move on to designed by. Okay, these are sellers' original designs that are produced or printed by a third party. So this is where your pod people come in, or offered as a digital download. Now, one issue that I will say is they've got it down here. So listing image requirements is they are saying that your first image must show a finished, customized item rather than a blank product or a placeholder. Okay, so this is where people start to get a little bit confused. Now, my personal thing here, and I do want you guys to bear in mind that this is just the first step of many, so this could very likely change, is that I personally wouldn't necessarily use a terrible bad quality mock-up. as your first image, okay? Because what I have seen is I've seen a lot of shops being closed down because they are using like the stock mock-up picture that like Printful gives you, Printify gives you, whatever, okay? So that's one thing to be careful of, and I will pop the link for that in the chat as well. So if you want to have a little look at the listing image requirements and all that good stuff, then you can. Okay, so digital downloads of a seller's original design. So you know, if you sell like digital journals or downloadables or anything like that, seller's original design produced by a production partner, so this is pod, okay, and seller prompted AI creations. Now the rule is now that you have to label and you have to be very specific if you are using AI in any part of your design. Okay. And they have like an actual official stance on AI creations. But within that, they are also saying this can change at any moment because AI is changing every single day. So what I will say is for the moment, they are letting sellers unleash their creativity and ideas through AI, but there probably will come a time where AI creations may or may not be allowed. Okay, so if you do use AI, just be very careful and make sure at least every week to check what their stance is. Okay, but they are saying that you have to clearly label it. All right. So that's kind of like the two main ones. Obviously, they have the handpicked, which is the vintage side of things, and the source by, which is the supplies and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Now, a lot of you were like, how does this roll with existing listings? Okay, so I'm just going to switch back to this tab. So basically, what has happened? Is it this tab? No, let me find the right tab. Hang on. Here we go. It's this one. So what this means is that when you create a listing, you're now going to have more options. Okay. And it's filling out those more options that's going to give you the label. And it's pretty obvious, really, when you kind of look at it. It's the drop down menus that they're giving you gives you a list of things. You know, was it made by me? Was it produced by me? And it's basically like a little mini, I don't know, like questionnaire, like choose your own adventure type of thing that you answer, and they will give you the label based on what your answers are. Okay. Now, this is something that is also retroactively applied to all of your listings. So, you know, when you used to list a listing, right, and it said made by date, who did it, all that kind of stuff. Well, they're basically using that information that you've already given them to give you the label. Some people are saying it's the wrong label, and if it is, that is when you go back in and you go, right, was it supplied by me, was it sourced by me, was it okay? So if you are concerned about having the wrong label, that is when you go in and you alter it, because obviously some categories of products, if you're teetering on the edge of one versus the other, you manually going in and actually like applying that stuff is going to be the thing that kind of tips it back to whatever label that you need. When I'm saying this is a small step, what it means is that because they have more labels, because it's not just handmade or not now, the bot that kind of goes round and starts to close shops down that are not compliant with the rules and the T's and C's, they're going to have a lot more data to accurately do this. And this is part of the reason why it's a good thing as to why they are doing this. It's not just about the pretty little label that you get. It is because they then can really, well, not really accurately, but they can more accurately see who is breaking the rules and who is not. Okay, so if you have been peed off with seeing shops that are selling things that they should not have, if you are being peed off with people selling like cheap knockoffs, if you've been peed off with people selling things that are blatantly not allowed, you should be in favor of all of this. Okay, yes, so it's actually a really good thing, because what it means is that you are, and like I said, this is like the first in a very small sequence of steps where Etsy is actually going, we are not allowing this stuff to happen. Okay, we are not allowing stuff that shouldn't be allowed on Etsy. And I love the fact that they've been a lot more specific. They are like, right, this is what we want, this is what we expect. And if you watch the video, obviously we know that like 3-4 weeks ago, Etsy were like, we are going back to our roots. And this is the first of a bunch of very small steps that they are taken, right? So it's actually a really good thing, because again, what it means is that you are going to start to see people that are, using less IP infringement things, that are, undercutting you in price, I don't know, whatever, right? And people selling items that should not be on the platform, right? Guys, I really hope that has kind of helped put your mind at ease, is that there has been no changes algorithmically speaking. There has been nothing really altered. The only pain in the ass thing is if you think you've got the wrong label, then you have to go and change it all. But personally, I don't know, I kind of feel, because I had to go and change my own stuff as well, and I just did like right click, new tab, right click, new tab, right click, new, and I just did that. It took me about 30 minutes to do, like, I know, 200 or something like that. But for me, I was like, well, an hour of my life in exchange for Etsy being or making steps towards being a pure handmade marketplace again, it's kind of a small price to pay, in my opinion. I just feel like having this is a lot better than just willy-nilly closing down shops and being like, oh, well, your items don't fall under the handmade, and the person saying yes it does, and then it becoming like a whole thing. Okay, so this in time should help with people's shops being closed down for the wrong reasons. Okay, because obviously a lot of you guys have kind of, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but a couple of you have kind of said, like, I'm put off of Etsy because of all these things. Now, the reason for that is because it's never really, I mean, apart from way back when, but it's never been actual human eyes looking at a shop and saying, I'm going to close you down, we're going to keep you open. Okay, it's always been done by a bit of code, an AI, a bot, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and they've basically kind of just looked at your shop, downloaded the metadata, looked at, lots of different bits of data that your shop has behind the scenes, and decided whether it thinks you should be allowed or you shouldn't be. Doing it this way means that rather than having 2 labels, is it handmade? Is it not handmade? Is it allowed? Is it not allowed? You have 5. Does it fit into these 4 things, or does it not? And we have to shut it down. So this is why it's actually like a good thing. Yeah. And I know that some of you might have different options, because obviously depending on what you sell depends on what those drop down menus will be. So if you're looking at it and you're like, that doesn't look right, I'm sure I'm supposed to have more drop down menus, contact Etsy, because obviously I don't know. And also, yeah, so do it on the desktop version. Don't do it on the app version, do it on the desktop version, because I found that it can glitch out a little bit on the app. But if you don't have the options that you think you should have, contact Etsy, because there's literally nothing I can do about it. I don't have access to your account. I can't get into the back end coding of Etsy. Like, I can't do any of those things. So if you are seeing a listing that you're like, I'm sure this is supposed to have some more menus for me to choose from, contact Etsy. Okay, I think really, I really feel positively about this. I really do think that this is the right step, because the alternative would have been to, really start to exclude a bunch of people. And obviously, when you do that, you have an uprising on your hands. And like, what I will say as well is that a lot of the stuff that people over the last 2 years have kind of said, Etsy is crap because of XYZ, has all been done because a piece of coding or a bot or an AI has made a wrong judgment call on an individual's account. So it's kind of like, when you kind of think of it like that, you're sort of thinking, well, yeah, okay, I can kind of see how this little bit of AI is never going to be 100% correct. It's always going to make mistakes and errors and all that kind of stuff. So when Etsy then in their latest announcement said they're going to put more like human manpower, to accompany the AI the AI, the code, the bot, whatever, it kind of makes you go, okay, so not only is this bit of code AI thingy learning, but also there's human power behind it. So it does kind of make you feel like, yeah, okay, they are really kind of moving on up. Like, I think that this is a positive change. I think that this is really in everyone's interest, because we all know that there's been lots of like IP infringement, you know, even things like, I know, making cake toppers that are Disney themed, or making Marvel, I don't know, headbands or something like that. Like, a lot of this, the IP thing is still going to have to be addressed. But the main problem has been people trying to sell non-handmade goods on a platform that's predominantly for handmade goods. And straight away, these 4 labels exclude all of those people. Okay? The main juicy bits of this live, which is just 3 things that whilst you're making these changes, you could do to your listings to make them convert a little bit better. Okay? One is your dispatch times. Now, I've recently run a test on this, and I had my dispatch times for longer. I had my dispatch times for shorter. I had my dispatch time somewhere in the middle. And let me tell you that when I decreased my dispatch times, my orders did shoot up. When I extended them, they fell, they went down. Now, I think the big reason for this is obviously when you do a search, you can actually filter it down the left-hand side by arrives in X, Y, Z amount of time. Okay. So when I kind of am looking at that, I'm going to be asking myself as a seller, okay, so I need to make sure that I am being as accurate as I can be with my times. Is there any way that I can shave a little bit of time off? Because having less dispatch times might mean the difference to Anne buying a gift for her next door neighbor from you versus Anne not buying from you because she doesn't want to take the risk that it won't be there in time. Okay. So this is your prompt. We are getting towards Christmas now. This is your reminder to please go and check your shipping profiles, check your dispatch times, make sure that they are as low as you can get them to be, but also as accurate as you can get them to be, right? And the second thing is something that I like to call your off the fence pictures. This is not just like listing photos. This is so much more than that. So when someone is looking at a listing, whether it's Etsy, your own website, whatever, they are basically using the photos as the main middleman to make that buying decision. What other things can you visually show that is going to get people off the fence? So this can be things like testimonials. This can be things like showing how it comes packaged. This can be lots of different things. Okay. So off the fence pictures, what are some features, some benefits, something that you can show in the listing pictures itself to get people off the fence, to make people go, yes, this is the correct choice here. Okay. And the third thing is simply how your items come packaged. Honestly, I cannot tell you the amount of listings that I go in and I do not see a picture of how the item is actually going to arrive on my doorstep. Will it be nicely gift wrapped? Will it be in tissue? Will it be in a box? Will it have a sticker on it? Will it have ribbon on it? I don't know, because a lot of the time there is no pictures of how the items will come packaged. And that seems to be something that a lot of people miss, right? So honestly, that is something that I never really see people do, and it's really important. Okay, so those are the 3 main things. Just for my loves, I really hope that this has helped put your mind at ease. I know that whenever there is a change like this in other like handmade business groups, you will always get people who are like, and who freak out and who are like, oh my God, another change. But I'm going to be honest with you. If a business doesn't change, it's dying. And I wouldn't want to be part of a dying platform that gets hardly any views, hardly any, buyers coming to it, because we all know there are plenty of other platforms that are like that. that claim to be the new rival to Etsy, and they're not, because they just stay the same. They never change. Nothing ever gets better. Nothing ever changes. So, you know, I really think that at times you have to kind of put things into perspective. There's a reason why they're making this change. And I can see why, if you don't sell handmade goods, you will be up in arms about it, because potentially that's an arm of your business cut off. But let's be honest, if that is you, you've always been sort of skirting the gray area of, is it allowed on Etsy or not? And it's those people that I think should be worried, and probably are a little bit worried right now, right? Okie dokes, guys. Thank you so much for joining me live. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.